I'm sure you've heard of white sand beaches, but have you ever ridden on white sand roads? Here's a look at what riding in southern Baja is like. We started in San Jose del Cabo, a small touristy town with a big airport in the south of the Baja Peninsula. Our first task was to get some rental bikes. We needed something sturdier than our usual touring bikes for the rough terrain. And anyway, it was a pretty short trip, so that's why we decided to rent instead of bringing our own. We ended up with nearly identical cube mountain bikes. They're nothing fancy, but sturdy and capable. We set them up with our own bags that we brought from home, and I brought my trusty Brooks saddle. Our route was the eastern coast from San Jose to La Paz. We would ride portions of the Baja Divide, a famous bikepacking route. It runs from San Diego, California all the way down the peninsula. The Baja Divide is over 1,600 miles and passes through many empty, inhospitable areas. The southernmost portion is called the Cape Loop. This area is a lot more popular with tourists, and there's a lot more areas for lodging and places to get water and food. We rode an eastern portion of the Cape Loop, but avoided some of the more difficult parts where there weren't hotels or places to get food and water. We rode for a total of 5 days, and even though the total mileage and elevation gain numbers weren't that intense, the ride was super challenging. As the route details page on the official website will tell you, it's not to be taken lightly. The places we stopped along the way were mostly small coastal towns with lots of tourists and expats. I spotted a little whale activity one morning. Most of the hotel options were pretty swanky and a little expensive compared to other parts of Mexico. The food included tons of delicious seafood and chilaquiles for breakfast. Probably the best piece of riding of the whole trip was this cliffside section over here. It's extremely remote and includes a small mountain pass. The views on either side were tremendous. There was a strong breeze which almost blew this bottle into the ocean. There were tons of ups and downs, and we definitely did do a little bit of walking. This rocky descent was pretty magical. After the mountain pass, we hit some pavement and made a turn to go spend the night in La Ventana. We were greeted by some brutal headwinds which made the last few miles pretty excruciating to ride. We felt pretty dumb complaining about the wind when we got into town because we realized that it was a premier windsurfing destination, and the wind was the whole reason everybody was here. We caught some live music before turning in for the night. The first 4 days were spent primarily on sand and washboard and rough conditions. Even the sky was washboard. Most of who passed us were riding these all-terrain 4x4 vehicles, or trucks which would kick up a whole bunch of dust when they passed. The rest of the time it was just us, the road, and the cattle. Thank you. Otherwise, this being the desert and all, the wildlife encounters were not that many. The last day was the only one that was fully paved, and it was also the biggest climb. We gained about 2,400 feet all in one go, but then we had to give it all back. We rolled into La Paz in the late afternoon and got some nice seafood. There were two main things that disappointed me on this trip. What a beautiful landfill. Like in other parts of Mexico, there was a little too much garbage on the side of the road. Here's a good reason maybe not to throw plastic around.
Why are you eating plastic, dummy?
The second thing was the privatization of the waterfront. We found out the hard way that a lot of the coastal road has been sold and privatized and is no longer able to be passed. There's a much more boring paved road that you have to take instead for large portions. We kept trying, and at one point a security guard made us walk our bikes along the beach until we passed the private property area. It's not a surprise developers would want to develop this area. It's just a shame to have public access taken away even though it was once there. La Paz is the capital of the state and a much bigger and more bustling town. We walked around the downtown a little bit before setting off back to San Jose. The return trip was a lot quicker. All in all, it was a challenging and a rewarding trip. Not super easy to do without camping, but as you can see, it was possible. Thanks for watching.